The smell of frosting hit me before I saw the cake, thick, sugary, too sweet, just like the lie wrapped around this whole evening. 32 candles, each one flickering like a reminder of how long I'd been carrying this family on my back. "Make a wish, sweetie," my mother said, her smile stretched thin and artificial, like the fondant roses decorating the cake she'd insisted on ordering from some overpriced bakery in Brooklyn. The cake cost $80. I knew because I paid for it. I paid for everything. I closed my eyes and made the same wish I'd made every year since my late 20s, that my parents would finally learn how to stand on their own 2 feet. Then I blew out the candles. Applause. Smiles. Laughter. The illusion of a happy family. Around the table sat my parents, my younger sister Madison, and her boyfriend Tyler. We were in the downtown Boston condo I'd rented for my parents 2 years ago, $4,200 a month. They called it home. I called it another invoice on my tab of guilt. Present time. Madison chirped, handing me a small box wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a simple bracelet, delicate, pretty, and probably $40 from Macy's. "It's beautiful, Maddie," I said, forcing warmth into my voice. "Your turn," she said, turning toward our parents. My father cleared his throat. My mother's smile didn't move, but her eyes flickered uneasy. Then my father pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table. "Happy birthday, Vanessa." Something in his tone made me hesitate before touching it. The envelope was thick, too formal. My name was typed on the front. Inside, the words were sharp and cold, "Notice to vacate premises." At first, my brain refused to process it. Then the meaning hit. "You are hereby notified that your tenancy at 447 Commonwealth Avenue is terminated effective immediately. You must vacate the premises by 11:59 p.m. on May 14, 2024. Today was May 14th. My birthday. I looked up, blinking. What is this?" My mother avoided my gaze. "We've been talking," she said softly, "and we think it's time you moved out. You're 32. You shouldn't still be living with your parents." I laughed, a short, humorless sound. "I don't live with you. You live in my condo. The one I rent. The one I pay for." "Technically," my father said, his voice tightening, "the lease is in our names. So, legally, it's our residence. And we're asking you to leave." I just stared at them, the world tilting sideways. 2 years ago, they'd been days from homelessness after my father's business went under. I'd saved them. Paid everything. Rent. Groceries. Insurance. Even gave them a monthly allowance so they could live comfortably while I worked 80-hour weeks at my startup. And now they were evicting me. On my birthday. With 12 hours notice. "Why?" I asked quietly. My mother's lips trembled. "We need space. And frankly, your presence here is complicated." "Complicated?" I repeated. "You're always working," my father said. "Always busy. You make us feel like we're in the way." "And Madison mentioned she might want to move to Boston," my mother added. The air in the room froze. "So you're evicting me so Madison can move in?" Madison's cheeks flushed. "They just asked if I wanted to." "I didn't know." "You have until midnight," my father interrupted. "We've already changed the locks for tomorrow morning." I looked down at the eviction letter, at their signatures printed neatly beneath the lawyer's name. They had planned this. Hired someone. Signed documents. Smiled through dinner while plotting to kick me out of the home I paid for. "Okay," I said finally. My mother blinked. "You're not going to argue?" "No," I said softly. "You're right. It's time I moved out. Time for independence. For all of us." I stood, leaving the cake untouched, and walked to my small bedroom, the one I'd taken so they could have the master suite. My hands shook as I packed the few things I had. Laptop. Clothes. A few books. My whole life fit into my car. Then I opened my phone and began untying every financial string holding them up. Rent canceled. Utilities canceled. Car insurance, health insurance, monthly allowance canceled. Credit card access revoked. Family phone plan scheduled for termination. Every single thing they depended on vanished with a few taps. Finally, I called my lawyer. "Hey, David. I need you to do something for me tonight." At 11:47 p.m., I carried the last box to my car. My parents stood by the window watching. My mother's face was pale. My father looked almost relieved. "Where will you go?" Madison asked quietly. "I have options." My mother's voice cracked. "This doesn't mean we're not family." I turned back to them, the eviction notice still in my hand. "You evicted me on my birthday with 12 hours notice," I said. "What do you think it means?" "Don't be dramatic," my father muttered. "I'm not being dramatic," I said. "I'm being accurate." I opened the door, then paused. "By the way, the condo lease? It's held in a trust." "My trust? Your names are on it as tenants, but I'm the legal owner." My father's color drained. "What? That means the eviction notice your lawyer drafted? It's worthless. You can't evict me from my own property." I smiled faintly. "But I can evict you." And I am. I stepped outside into the cold Boston night. "You wanted independence," I said, looking back. "You've got it." And then I drove away. The morning after I left, my phone exploded with calls. 10 missed calls from Mom. 6 from Dad. 3 from Madison. Then came the texts. "Emma, Vanessa, the internet's not working." "Dad, where's the rent payment?" "The landlord says it's overdue." "Emma, the car insurance lapsed. They're saying the policy was canceled." "What's going on?" I didn't respond. Instead, I sat in a small cafe on Boylston Street, sipping black coffee, watching the city move, busy, self-contained, uncaring. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. But peace doesn't last long when your family's world starts to crumble. By noon, my father showed up at my office. Red-faced. Sweating. Furious. "You had no right," he said, slamming a stack of papers onto my desk. "The property is ours. You tricked us." I looked up from my laptop. "No. I protected it. You were about to lose the house to debt collectors before I bought it under my name. I put you on the lease so you'd have a place to stay. That was generosity, not deception." His jaw tightened. "You're cold. Heartless. Heartless." I repeated, standing slowly. "I paid your bills for 2 years. You evicted me on my birthday. And I'm heartless?" His silence said everything. "You'll regret this," he muttered finally, and stormed out. He was right, I would regret it, but not in the way he thought. 2 weeks later, my parents were officially served their eviction notice. 30 days to vacate. Legal. Unavoidable. Madison called that night, crying. "Vanessa, they're panicking. Mom's been sick over it. Please, just don't do this." I pinched the bridge of my nose, exhausted. "Do you remember what they did, Maddie?" "Yes, but..." "They handed me an eviction letter on my birthday. For an apartment I paid for. They didn't even give me a day to pack." She was quiet for a moment. "They made a mistake. They thought." "No," I said. "They didn't think. They planned it. They signed papers. They smiled through dinner knowing what they were about to do." Her breath trembled. "You don't have to destroy them." "I'm not destroying them," I said. "I'm just not saving them anymore." And that was the truth. When the 30 days were up, they left. The condo was empty again, quiet, echoing, free of the constant tension that had filled it like smoke. But guilt is funny. It creeps in when the anger fades. One night, I went back. There were still faint outlines on the walls where their photos used to hang. The smell of my mother's lavender cleaner lingered in the air. I stood there for a long time, letting the silence weigh on me. Then I heard a soft knock on the door. It was Madison. She looked small, tired. "They're living in a motel in Quincy," she said quietly. "Dad's been trying to find work. Mom barely leaves the room." I swallowed. "They'll figure it out." She looked at me like I'd said something cruel. "Will you ever talk to them again?" "I don't know." She hesitated, then handed me a small envelope. "Mom wanted you to have this." Inside was a single photo, me at 6 years old, sitting between them on our old porch, holding a half-eaten slice of cake. On the back, my mother had written in her looping script, "We weren't always this broken." I closed my eyes. That night, I didn't sleep. The anger that had fueled me for weeks had burned out, leaving only the ashes, grief, regret, and something that felt dangerously like love. The next morning, I drove to Quincy. They were exactly as Madison had said, pale, smaller somehow, like the air had been let out of them. My father looked up as I entered, eyes wary, proud even in defeat. "What are you doing here?" he asked. I set the photo on the table. "We need to talk." We didn't fix everything that day. We didn't cry or hug or make some grand reconciliation speech. But we talked. Honestly. For the first time in years. They apologized. I did, too, not for protecting myself, but for letting money replace boundaries, for letting resentment rot us from the inside out. And when I left that motel, I didn't feel like the villain or the victim. Just free. It had been exactly a year since that motel meeting. A year of silence. I thought the storm had finally passed. I'd rebuilt my life piece by piece, new apartment, new job, new peace. I told myself forgiveness didn't need contact. That loving from a distance was enough. But peace in my family never lasted long. The letter came on a Tuesday. I found it folded in my mailbox, no return address, my name written in my mother's familiar, looping script. My hands trembled as I held it, that same handwriting that used to appear on lunchbox notes, birthday cards, and eventually, eviction notices. Inside were 2 pages. The first line stopped my breath. "Vanessa, I have cancer." I sat down right there on the floor of the hallway. The world blurred. The edges of the page smeared with tears before I could even finish reading. She said it was ovarian. Late stage. She didn't want to burden me, but she wanted me to know just in case. "Your father doesn't want you to worry," she wrote, "but I'd like to see you one more time if you can find it in your heart." One more time. The phrase looped in my head for hours. That night, I didn't go out. I didn't eat. I just sat on my couch, staring at the city lights outside my window, wondering if forgiveness had an expiration date. 3 days later, I drove back to Quincy. The motel was gone, boarded up. Madison met me outside a small apartment complex instead. She looked thinner, older. "She's been getting treatment," she said softly. "Dad's been trying to keep things together." "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Madison looked away. "Because they didn't think you'd come." She wasn't wrong. For a long time, I wouldn't have. When I stepped inside, Mom was asleep on a couch, her hair thinner, her skin pale. The television flickered softly, playing some old cooking show she used to love. Dad sat beside her, flipping through unpaid medical bills. He didn't look up at first. When he did, his eyes were full of something I hadn't seen in years, humility. "She didn't want you to see her like this," he said. I needed to. I knelt beside her and took her hand. It was cold and fragile, like paper left out in the rain. Her eyelids fluttered open. "Vanessa," she whispered. A weak smile spread across her face. "You came." "I'm here, Mom." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I didn't deserve that." "Neither of us did," I said. She laughed softly, a sound that broke halfway through. "You always were stronger than all of us." "No," I whispered. "Just better at pretending." The weeks that followed blurred together, doctor visits, quiet dinners, late-night talks that felt like stolen time. One evening, as I brushed her hair, she said, "You know, I kept that photo of you, the one from your 6th birthday. The one with the cake." "I know. You sent it to me." She smiled faintly. "That was my way of saying I never stopped loving you." I wanted to tell her I knew that. I wanted to say I forgave her completely. But the truth sat heavy in my chest. Forgiveness wasn't a switch you flipped. It was a door you kept reopening, even when it hurt. When she passed in early spring, it was quiet, peaceful. She was holding my hand. My father didn't speak at the funeral. Neither did I. The silence between us was too deep, too fragile. After everyone left, he stood beside her grave for a long time before finally turning to me. "She was proud of you, you know," he said. Even when she didn't know how to say it. I nodded, unable to speak. He sighed, eyes glistening. "I made a lot of mistakes. We both did. But you were the only one who ever did what was right, even when it hurt." It was the first time he'd ever said something like that to me. And maybe the last. Months later, a small envelope arrived in the mail, no return address again. Inside was a key and a handwritten note in my mother's handwriting. "For you. The house by the lake. You said it felt like peace. Now it's yours." I hadn't told her that. I'd only mentioned it once, years ago, a dream of buying a quiet place where no one could touch me. Somehow she remembered. When I drove out there the next weekend, the house was real, small, quiet, overlooking the water. The walls smelled of cedar and ocean air. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilt or anger. Just the faint, bittersweet warmth of knowing she'd finally given me something I couldn't buy myself, closure. I stood on the porch until sunset, watching the light fade across the lake. Behind me, my phone buzzed, a text from Madison. "Dad's not doing well. He's been asking for you." The wind shifted, cool and sharp against my face. Forgiveness had come for my mother. But my father, that was another story. I didn't plan on going back. After Mom's funeral, I promised myself I'd stay away from Quincy, from the past, from all the ghosts that lived in both. But the message from Madison wouldn't leave me alone. "Dad's not doing well. He's been asking for you." I tried to ignore it for 3 days. Each time I saw her name flash on my phone, I silenced it. Each time I thought of his voice, sharp, dismissive, heavy with blame, I told myself I was done. But then I dreamed of Mom. She was standing by the lake house window, sunlight spilling across her shoulders. She didn't say anything, just looked at me with that quiet, forgiving sadness she'd worn in her final days. When I woke up, I knew. Some things won't stop haunting you until you face them. I found him in a small assisted living home outside the city, the kind that smelled of disinfectant and lost time. The nurse led me down a narrow hallway lined with faded family photos and half-dead plants. He was sitting by the window, thinner than I'd ever seen him. His hair had gone completely white. But when he looked up, those same gray eyes, the ones that used to pin me in place with disappointment, softened. "Vanessa," he said quietly. "You came." I did. For a while, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick with all the words we hadn't said over the years. Then, with a trembling hand, he gestured to the chair beside him. "I thought I'd never see you again," he murmured. "After everything." "I thought so too," I admitted. He gave a small, tired smile. "Your mother always said you had my stubbornness." I guess she was right. Maybe that's why we never got along. He chuckled, then coughed, a harsh, dry sound that made me flinch. When it passed, he leaned back and said, "I was angry for so long. I didn't know how to stop." I looked at him, waiting. "I blamed you for things that weren't your fault," he continued. "For succeeding where I failed. For becoming everything I couldn't." His voice cracked. "And when you stopped needing me, I didn't know how to love you anymore." The words hit me like a blow. I hadn't expected honesty, not from him. "You hurt me," I whispered. "I know." He turned to the window, watching the light fade. "And you hurt me too. But you were right to." Tears burned my eyes. "Why now, Dad? Why ask for me now?" "Because time runs out," he said simply. "And because I wanted you to know I was proud of you. Even when I couldn't say it. Especially then." He reached for my hand. For a second, I almost pulled away, old habits, old defenses. But then I let him hold it. His skin was cold, frail, trembling slightly. "I forgive you," I said softly. "Not because you deserve it, but because I need to." He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "That's more than I deserve." He passed 2 weeks later. Peacefully, they said. When Madison called, her voice was calm, maybe because we'd both been expecting it. I drove out to the facility one last time, collected the small box of his belongings. Inside were a watch, a few letters, and a folded photo. It was the same picture Mom had given me a year ago, the 3 of us on that old porch, sunlight spilling across our faces. But this time, there was something new taped to the back. We weren't always this broken. And maybe we never were. I cried for the first time in months. Not out of pain this time, but release. A month later, I stood again on the porch of the lake house. The air smelled of pine and rain. The water rippled quietly under the fading sun. This place had become mine now, not through inheritance, but through survival. Through forgiveness. Through finally letting go of who I was in order to become who I needed to be. I spread their ashes together, side by side, into the lake. The water shimmered as the wind carried them away. "Goodbye," I whispered. "Thank you for loving me in the only ways you knew how." And for the first time, I meant it. As the last traces disappeared beneath the surface, I felt something loosen inside me, the kind of quiet that only comes after a long, hard storm. I went inside, poured a cup of tea, and sat by the window where the light spilled across the floor just like in my dream. This time, it didn't feel like a memory. It felt like peace.